Hey guys, today we will be reviewing Above Snakes. Above Snakes is a peculiar mix of sandbox, open world adventure, exploration game with some world building, crafting, and survival aspect. Plot and setting. This game is inspired by American colonization, Wild West, settlers, tribes, and such. You will be playing as Ayana, whose parents come from different backgrounds, from local tribe and from settlers. Something has happened and now undead roam the world. You will have to find out what exactly happened, but everything will be tied to your own skills and survival, so in order to advance story, you will have to commit to the crafting, exploration, survival part of the game. It's a pretty basic story, it's on rails, without any role-playing options, and feels more like an afterthought and a filler, while main idea was a gameplay and world-building feature. So don't get too attached to the story and don't expect intricate details. It touches common tropes about settlers and local tribes having some kind of disagreements, but this aspect is very let's say, kid friendly, so no big drama, no bloodshed or anything. The undead storyline is the same in terms that it just barely explains why they appeared. Writing is as simple as it gets for a game where story is kind of secondary. Protagonist is a good girl and helps people. Those people are mostly good too, well, except for outlaws that you can kill for bounty, but we will not think about how you violently make their kids into orphans. Those kids deserve to be orphans. Questing. Questing is mostly a part of main story and only bounty hunting quests are separate. You can take a quest for elimination of band of undead or outlaws from a quest board, and once you return with victory you get reputation. Once you acquire a certain amount of reputation you get a reward, either decorative element or a piece of gear. As for a main story quest, your ability to advance in crafting and world building will be often tied to story and vice versa. Some blueprints will be acquired from NPCs you meet on your journey, and having blueprints and items will also unlock world pieces, biomes, and related NPCs. Gameplay. The most interesting element of this game is its own concept of exploration and world building. At the start of the game, you have no world whatsoever, meaning that you literally have nowhere to go and have only your initial square of world with some pre existing structures. Then you build a cartography table and start researching new biomes or world pieces or world squares. Researching those requires some materials that you can gather or craft. When you do certain actions like gather berries, for example, you get a discovery meter filling up. Once you have both a researched world piece and a field meter, you can place a new world piece, thus building the world the way you want it. You just have to follow rules of biomes as they need to transition into each other in a logical way. So before you will be able to put pine forest biome, for example, you will have to put plains slash forest square, and then you place a forest square next to it. Some biomes can never transition into each other, like plains can't turn into icy lakes or desert, and will need other biomes in between. Just like you put biomes for the sake of resource gathering, you will be able to put pieces or squares with unique NPCs and story locations. And by the way, if you decided that you want to remove a world piece, you can do it by using craftable ink material and world editor. So if you decide that you rather have a forest nearby, you can redo your neighborhood. Essentially, you have some sort of world editor inbuilt into game mechanics and gameplay. The most common game loop looks roughly like this. Gather resources, hunt or fish, build something, cook some food, progress story quest, get a task that requires you to gather and craft something to be able to unlock a new biome, do it, unlock and place a world piece, get new blueprints or items from unlocked NPCs, eat, drink, sleep, upgrade shelter, upgrade your workbench to unlock more stuff. And repeat this cycle again and again as you go from stone tools to silver tools. The survival aspect is present, but it is toned down compared to true survival games. In Above Snakes, you will have to care about heat, cold, fatigue, food, and water. Plus, there is a sanity, which mostly limits how many times you can loot corpses. When you run out of sanity, you will get a debuff that makes it harder to use your items. Overall, it's not that easy to royally mess up to the point of dying. If you die, you might drop some items and respawn in your house. As for enemies, they are pretty dumb and only pose some danger if you're trying to take them out in a melee combat or aggro several of them, but it is very easy to shoot them to death from distance. Combat wise, you can do only three things: roll away from attacks, shoot, bow or rifle, or chop enemies with axe. There is situational usage of explosives, but it's pretty rare and only late into the game. While game will make you fight, it is unlikely that you will ever be stuck because of combat difficulty. I managed to die only once when I recklessly tried to run around during night without any torches and got stuck between angry zombies and a fence. Game has a simple RPG stat upgrades that automatically occur when you do related activities. So if you run a lot, you will get stamina points. If you chop a lot, you will increase X stats. But nothing fancy in this department. Who will like this game? It's important to understand that games like this are not driven by wild stories or fast paced gameplay. You gotta love and enjoy crafting and survival, busy work for the sake of building up your shelter, getting upgrades, unlocking recipes, and just for the sake of reaching some sort of prosperity. So, if you expect that Above Snakes will surprise you, entertain you with wild discoveries, etc., better skip it. Compared to some other games of these genres, Above Snakes is not particularly grindy. This is because gear and tools never break and food never spoils. So, as soon as you are done with basic setup and have reserves of cooked meals and water, you have time and possibility to concentrate on other tasks. And if you figure out how world building works soon enough, you can build biomes relatively close to your base of operation and reduce amount of time you have to spend on travel. Some of the survival based challenges may be countered by buffs or items. For example, coffee removes need to sleep for some time. Torches allow you to navigate around during nights. Warm clothes prevent cold from building up your fatigue, etc. If doing all of this seems fun to you and you are interested in a mix of genres where specific elements are toned down for the sake of whole package being manageable and cozy and relaxing enough, Above Snakes might be your cup of tea. It's not the best survival, it's not the most intricate crafting, and it's not the most rich in options among cozy games, but it is a decent set of features to have in one game. Visuals. It is stylized, low poly kind of art direction, looks neat and pleasant, and quite fits the game's relaxing nature. My only complaint was some plants in certain biomes were too similar to reliably identify and distinguish them. Camera and controls. Not a huge fan of camera. I have played on keyboard and mouse, and you have to readjust camera by pressing Q or E. Considering that this game is not challenging and doesn't test your reaction time for most part, readjusting camera is not a huge deal breaker, just a noticeable inconvenience. Controls are okay, quick access slots mostly cover typical needs in regard to tools, but I find myself being a bit annoyed at the fact that there is no way to use sets of clothing, which is a bummer because game clearly has sets of clothes that are best for cold climate, hot climate, or combat. Stability. I had around 6 to 7 crashes, mostly tied to world building and placing pieces of certain biomes. Hard to tell whether it was unlucky combination of GPU drivers, some system issues, or games problem. I looked up Games Community Hub on Steam and latest reviews, and they don't mention crashes as a frequent or dire problem, so I will go with unlucky combination of software for now. Bad or underwhelming. At no point I wanted to stop playing it because of frustration or anger or something, so the first test is passed. However, it is a game that may feel like it is underperforming if you approach it thinking that it excels in genres that constitute its core. Basically, it has somewhat shallow components that may not perform that well for specific genre fans, while they may annoy other genres fans. For example, survival is very basic, but it's still there, so the cozy gamers have to go through it before they get to shelter upgrading and decorations. Shelter, its exterior and interiors are sort of there, but they are quite simplistic and underdeveloped to attract people who want to spend a lot of time on decorating their homes. Crafting is present, but it's countered by the fact that nothing in the game is truly challenging, so why even craft that much? Yes, there are three levels of rifles, but the problem is that you can easily finish game even with medium bows. So essentially, we do have those aspects, but they are not developed enough. Bounty hunting board is not particularly interesting, grinding its rewards feels like a time padding. You cycle through the same enemies who just increase in numbers, which doesn't mean much since they are still dumb, and there is not really an in game reason to farm those idiots. Essentially, the game is not challenging enough to care about combat, not cozy and varied enough to care about your house, not inventive enough to care about crafting, and not mysterious enough to care about adding more pieces to the world. It somewhat works when combined, but it doesn't feel like a game you would specifically recommend to someone who is searching for some of those subgenres experience. It is a mid-tier indie game that pulls it off, but mostly it feels like a stepping stone for promising developers to hone their skills, get some exposure, and create a more refined and detailed product. Audio. Mostly just soothing soundtrack at the background and sounds for basic actions, so it's nothing to praise, but at least it's not mute. Value and price. At the moment of writing this review, Above Snakes costs 25 euros or $25 on Steam and GOG.com. It is an indie game and a product of a very small team, and it is pretty obvious by the content limitations. It is a solid first game for an indie studio, but it is significantly overpriced if we judge the full price. I believe I got it in a bundle, and it most likely costed me about 5 euros per item or even less, so I was not disappointed, but I would be a lot less tolerant towards a 25 euro games with its current content. Game length. Took me about 20 hours. I finished story, done some bounty hunting, and unlocked most of the crafting recipes. At this point, it's mostly achievement hunting that is left and some cooking recipes, wokeness, ideological topics, etc. It has only couple of potentially controversial parts, I guess, like way it touches on tribes versus settlers narrative. Now, this is not a topic we usually discuss in Eastern Europe. It's mostly an American thing, but as far as I can tell, game definitely does not go into any extremes. It follows some typical tropes like problems of sharing the land, but I think it's just way too cute and simple to really annoy anyone. Replayability. As mentioned before, if you farm materials and craft enough of ink, you can redraw your world, and if you are patient, you can place a lot of new pieces, but there is a little point in doing that, unless you just like the look of it. Gameplay wise, there is nothing to replay or discover once you have seen all the biomes and have finished story. Overall, it is somewhat positive experience, and I can see why Square Glade Games' next project called Outbound has received good amount of backing on Kickstarter. Above Snakes is a wait for a sale kind of game, but it did spark my interest towards Dev's next game, so I would say it is something like those 5 out of 10 games that are not particularly recommendable but still leave a positive impression. Thank you for watching this video, guys, and I see you in the next review.